Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Kimberly Hubenette. Live, love, survive, thrive. Welcome to my next episode of Live, Love, Survive, Thrive. So, today is such a beautiful day outside. It's a little cloudy. The weather's a little bit like nice and, cozy. It's like sometimes maybe it's a good day to curl up on your couch and watch TV or uh, watch a special episode of something or listen to a podcast or read a book with your cup of coffee or your tea. So I invite you to listen, and I'm glad that you're here today. We have a special guest, someone I've known for a few years, and her name is Nancy Martin. She goes by Nancy J. Martin, and she'll tell you why in a sec. But I wanted to introduce her to you all. She is also a widow, and she's had a magnificent life so far. There are things that have happened to her that are so unique, and everybody's story is unique, right? There's only two things in common. What we do is we are born and we die, and the journey in between is always different for everybody. So, with that being said, I'm going to introduce her and she can tell you a little bit more. So, Nancy J. Martin is the author of From the Summer of Love to the Valley of the Moon and The Long Red Hair and other short stories. She was born in San Francisco, raised in Marin County, and migrated north to the Valley of the Moon, where she has resided since 1976. She's a published author of two books and one halfway into a third, and a jeweler at the Arts Guild of Sonoma since 2014. This is Nancy J. Martin. Welcome, Nancy.
Good morning, Kimberly.
Yes, nice to have you on.
Thank you.
So, was there anything that I missed on your author and your life story that before we jump into your story?
Well, my life story is kind of unusual, which is why I wrote the book. People asked me to write a memoir so that I could talk about what an unusual life I've had.
Yeah, when we've talked before, you told me a few things that I went, wow, that's really interesting. So I can't wait to hear your story. And we have a lot of time, so we're gonna jump right into it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, can you take us back? Well, can you take us back to a defining moment in your life, one that shifted everything?
Oh gosh, well, that was in 1986 when I was diagnosed with an acoustic neuroma, which is a brain tumor that originates on your acoustic nerve, and that changed everything in my life.
And, you know, since it did change everything in your life, how did was your husband already passed away at that point, or what? Tell the listeners because our listeners are here to hear a story of survival. So some people are here that they've just lost a loved one, whether it be a brother, sister, husband, partner, child, best friend, somebody that was significant to them, and they're trying to find inspiration of how to move forward.
Well, I've been married three times. Two of those husbands are now passed away, and I've also been in some significant relationships where those men are no longer alive. In regard to what happened to me in 1986, I was married at that time, and I had been married for 12 years. They wrapped my head and face up like a mummy, and when they took the bandages off, my husband was horrified and he left me immediately. So I have a lot of grief stemming from that.
Wow. I actually didn't know that part of it.
Well, I don't talk about that a lot.
Hmm. Well, it says here also, I'm reading through your bio, and it says in the 70s, uh you're a hiker, you had some career with buttons, antlers, or something like that. Tell me
Well,
about that.
I in the 70s I had a spinning wheel and I would do things like go to the California State Fair and buy prize-winning fleeces and then spin that wool into yarn and dye it and sell it in places like the Renaissance Fair. And having always been an avid hiker, I would hike up into the Marin Hills and pick up things like antlers that had been shed by deer and come home and slice them up into beautiful buttons. I also made gorgeous leather clothes and leather handbags, and so I would use those buttons on those pieces, which I sold as fast as I could make them. So I've always been a maker. They call us makers now.
Okay. And then when you moved to Sonoma, you said that there's a in the fat you were in the fashion industry, but you also restored a Greyhound bus depot station?
I did,
What
in
is that?
fact, if you're familiar with Sonoma, on the west corner of the plaza, there's a store now in that building called Summervine. Across the street from that is the Girl in the Fig restaurant. And that building where Summervine is had been the Greyhound bus depot of Sonoma, and it was the eyesore of our city. I mean, it was really a mess. And interestingly enough, August Sebastiani was my landlord. So when the Greyhound company left there and the building came up for rent, I took it and I restored the building into its what you see today.
So it wasn't yours, but you renovated it for them.
That's correct. August Sebastiani was my landlord. He was
Wow.
still alive then.
Wow. And did
Yeah.
he give you money to do it
He
too?
gave me a break on the rent every month.
Oh, for doing it. That's
Correct.
cool.
It
Yeah,
was.
there's not a lot of renters that would take on that type of responsibility. That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
hmm
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, you said later on, you were a manager for a wine company, and then that's how you met one of your husbands.
Correct. So after being in the fashion industry for a number of years, I got the wine bug living in Sonoma. It's hard not to get the wine bug.
Hmm.
And I went to Santa Rosa Junior College, which at the time was uh, the educational center for the wine industry in Northern California, and I took everything that you could take from enology to wine marketing there. And when I went out to look for a job, the first winery that I went to was St. Francis Winery, which they hired me to work in the tasting room. I had to clean the bathrooms and work on the weekends. But I kind of made a meteoric rise there, and eventually, not long afterwards, became their sales manager and then their national sales manager. And then some years later, I married the founder, Joe Martin, who has passed away now.
And you mentioned your why of coming on to the show, uh, joyful tenacity. When I asked you why you would come onto the show to share your story, can you explain that to our listeners, please?
Well, Kimberly, due to the fact that the uh, acoustic nerve where my tumor was removed from, they resected it from there, um, is very close to that's the eighth nerve. It's very close to the facial nerve, the seventh nerve. And a lot of people, before they developed the laser knife, which they use now, um, many people developed paralyzed faces as a result, and mine is very severe. And people look at me, and little children point at me and make faces at me, and um, people constantly ask me, what's wrong with your face? Even today, I'll get into an elevator, someone will say, what's wrong with your face? Or everywhere I go, someone says to me, you should see my acupuncturist. Why don't you get some plastic surgery? Well, I've had 40 hours of surgery on my head and face up till now. And actually, I'm coming up on another one to have my one of my eyelids restored. And so it's the average, well, I in my book, in my memoir, I talk about planning my suicide, and I had it all planned out. And then things came up and I did not do that. And so now people tell me I'm very tenacious and I try to do it in a joyful manner.
So the grief that you talk about, is that the grief of your
The
husband?
loss of my personal persona.
Yes. So see, folks, there's a lot of different types of grief, and it could be in all types of forms or stages. And grief can be dealt with. It doesn't really ever go away, but you can learn to work with it. Would you say that?
People always say to me, well, you must be used to it by now. But honestly, Kimberly, um, if I have to look in the mirror or see a photo of myself, and because I'm an author and I do public readings, people often video me, I'm on YouTube, and it's very, very difficult for me to see myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I never get used to it. I have never gotten used to it.
And so, respecting the fact that, you have this situation, you know, day to day life, how do you move through the life journey? And what did the early stages of grief look like for you? What helped you move through it?
Well, I guess I should start with that, which is, they talk about different stages of grief. And first, of course, I was very angry because my husband walked out on me instead of supporting me, and he left me with no money, and my life went very much downhill from there. So I was angry, and then I would do things like people would say, what's wrong with your face? And I would say, well, gosh, what do you mean? I would try to embarrass them. Then I realized that that was not a very nice thing to do. So I've gone through various stages of dealing with how I deal with the way I look.
But you did mention that you were a widow twice before. And
Yes.
then, so does that affect you also, or what? Did they?
Well, my book does tell the story of my various marriages, and unfortunately, my two last husbands were both very abusive. And so I can't claim to be grieving about their deaths.
I see. So the first husband was the one that left, and then you married the.
The first husband, and my pitch for my book is I got married in 1967 in the renowned Summer of Love to a rock and roll musician in a rock and roll wedding. So my first husband, that I married when I was only 19, is still alive, and he and I are still friends.
I see. But you like removed yourself from him.
Yes, I did,
Yeah.
and the book tells why.
Okay.
So I don't want to do too many spoiler alerts here. You kind of have to read the book, but
Okay.
we are still friends.
And then the second late husband.
Is the one that left me when I was so ill.
And then the third husband.
was Joe Martin from St. Francis Winery. And unfortunately, he was bipolar and didn't want to take medication. So anyone who's ever dealt with anyone who is bipolar can understand what that means.
Okay. Okay. Good. I'm glad you kind of clarified because I was a little lost about all three of these people.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
and so, I do have a question about what helped you move through your grief. Did you answer that one already?
Um, well, originally, when I was planning my suicide, I called a suicide hotline and they suggested that I join a meditation group. And I did that. And I also, due to various other circumstances in my life, was dealing with people who were addicted to drugs. And so I did two things. I joined a meditation group and I started going to Al-Anon, which totally changed my life. The Al-Anon principles have really shaped my life. And for many years, I was an Alateen sponsor. I worked at a rehab uh, um, center where, because I was a fitness trainer for so many years, I worked with the recovering addicts, helping them with exercise and those kinds of things.
So you've lived with this for a very long time. How many years have you lived with this diagnosis and the
Since
treatment?
1986.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of
Yeah,
time.
I was 38 years old. I'm I'm 78 at this point.
How has your experience with grief shaped or reshaped your view of life, purpose, or even identity?
Well, I you have to learn how to deal with grief, as you mentioned, and so going through the various stages of grief is a learning experience, of course, and everyone does it differently, as you said. And so, for instance, instead of committing suicide, I started meditating and going to Al-Anon. So everyone does it differently.
Mm-hmm. Folks, listeners, there's different kinds of grief, right? We talked about that. And, if you did lose your loved one, it might have been a freeing experience instead of a non-freeing experience, is what basically. Sometimes, you said that your husbands that have uh, passed were kind of abusive. And so you're not like grieving that part of it, but you're grieving more of your uh, process of your paralyzed face from the neuroma, right?
Correct.
So, see, folks, there's different ways and different things, and we just love to hear stories about how you survive, how you thrive, and live again. So, what does living fully mean to you now, Nancy?
Well, I try to start off my day often by jumping into a swimming pool and doing deep water aerobics. And after an hour of that, boy, that really will make your day clean, refreshed, and energized.
What practices or habits or people supporting your transformation is the most? Like you said that there are things in your past, um, but are there things now that people who have helped you transform, supported you in your transformation of your life?
Sure. But I would like to say that having been a lifetime equestrian and always having horses and maintaining my horses myself as opposed to boarding them, and riding since I was a small child, taught me a real sense of responsibility, which I talk about in my book. And really um, enriched my life in a very big way, my life with horses.
Yeah, horses actually are very soothing. They can read people. I went to this horse ranch in Petaluma a few years ago, and the owner
Sonoma Horse Park, I'll bet.
may yes, and their premise is like to work with children or people that have like situations where they need to maybe they can't speak or they have autism or something like that, and they are able to read the horses or they learn how to work with the horses, and it's
Right. There's a
really,
wonderful organization there called Giant Steps, and I
yeah,
believe that's what you're talking about.
yeah, maybe it is, but I we went there, and it was really interesting because I took my dental staff to work as a team to learn how to read people without having words, just the horse. Yeah, and it was really interesting to read body language and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. That's great.
And so, yeah, so you mentioned a lot of things, interesting things about life and the things about living, loving, surviving, thriving. Out of all of those scenarios, have you learned to live, love, survive, and thrive?
I would have to answer yes to that. I am very domestic person. I just love gardening, for instance, watching things and helping things grow. I'm a serious foodie. I love cooking. And having been a fitness instructor for a big majority of my life, I'm really into exercise and encouraging others to do that. And I'm also a member of the Arts Guild in Sonoma, where I'm a jeweler, and I am a volunteer docent at Jack London State Historic Park, where I'm very active there. I'm do a lot of different things there in the park. And so the more things that you do, you develop community in each of those places. And I think that that's really, really important for living, loving, surviving, and thriving, is developing community wherever you go.
That's a great one. You know, do you think that's helped you uh, tremendously in your life as doing extra things with the community and, basically friendships, long-term, lifetime friendships that you've created?
Immeasurably, that's priceless.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you think that the listeners want to hear about yourself, and tell us a little tip that makes your story unique?
Oh gosh, well, I'm different from most people. I look different, I act different, I am different, and you just have to be the best person that you can be.
Yeah, yeah. And it sounds like even though you have had this uh, all your life now, well, since you were 30, 36, uh, do you think that going out with the public and doing all this other stuff um, affected the way that you choose to see yourself?
That is a really good question. I left to my own devices, I would just stay home, but I choose to go out into the public and, for instance, being a docent at Jack London State Historic Park, I have to interact with people from all over the world, and I notice that as soon as they start talking to me, all the weird feelings that they might have about the way I look seem to disappear. Of course, I work at the Arts Guild. I am an artist member there uh, since 2014. And so I'm in retail sales there. And again, I have to interact with people from all over the world. And the same thing. I mean, people say weird things to me, but if they do, I respond the best way I know how.
Yeah, what drives you to be in the public instead of stay at home?
It's more fun. It's definitely more fun to be out there. One of the residual effects of my surgery, because they had to remove my acoustic nerve from my left ear, is that I am legally deaf. And that is not fun, and it's very challenging. And so being deaf is very isolating. And I do have what they recently developed, a two-sided hearing aid, which picks up all the sound from my deaf side, sends it all over to my hearing side. But if I'm in a noisy environment, then what I'm hearing is cacophony. So all these things you have to adjust to. And what are you going to do? You have to adjust to it.
Hmm. At least you can hear some things, right?
Yes, I can.
You said that you have two books and one on the way.
Correct. My second book, a book of short stories, The Long Red Hair and Other Short Stories, now has, well, it's won a number of awards. It has two gold medals and a silver medal, and it's gotten rave reviews. So, and the first book uh, was awarded 5 stars by Writer's Digest, which is the most prestigious writing journal in the United States.
Yeah, because you had a very interesting story.
Hmm.
We don't want to spoil it for the listeners if they want to buy the book, but is it on Audibles also, or is
It
it?
is. Yeah, it's on audiobook. The book is available, of course, on Amazon, as everything is. And then locally, you can find the book at Reader's Books in Sonoma, which happens to be right next door to the Arts Guild of Sonoma, where I also always have the books. It's available at Copperfield's in Santa Rosa.
Mm, that's interesting. Are those true stories or not true stories?
Well, the memoir, of course, is an entirely true story.
Mhm.
There are memoir pieces in the short stories. Also, there is fiction, essay, a little bit of everything in the short story book, and it's humorous. There's a lot of horse stories in there, um, lots of different kinds of things.
And then I know you can't really tell us much about your third book that is almost written, but any any
It's a very unusual, dark topic, and people, if I happen to tell them, which I'm not going to reveal here, what the topic is, ask me why I'm writing about such a dark topic, and my answer is someone has to write about that.
I see. Okay, that's intriguing. Really intriguing, Nancy.
Thank you.
So since I've known you for a while, I'm glad that we had this conversation and you came onto our podcast. But is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
If they would like to see some photos of me, they can go to my website, which is nancyjmartinauthor.com. That's NancyJMartinauthor.com. I always use my middle initial because there are numerous authors by the name of Nancy Martin.
Got it. So yeah,
And on the audiobook,
uh-huh.
there's a live interview with me and uh, uh, lots of information about me.
Yeah. I would love to see pictures of you in the 80s. I would love to see pictures of you in your rock star years.
Oh, they're in there, starting with a picture of me on a horse when I'm like, I don't know, 4 years old, up through all very, there's pictures of me at my wedding at St. Francis Winery with my late husband, Joe Martin. Lots of photos in there.
Interesting. Yeah, these local things that are around here, people, want to hear maybe some of these local stories, and it just brings back like nice thoughts when I think about St. Francis Winery or, you know, other places that you have restored, the places that you've worked. It's really interesting to hear. I want to read that book. I actually want to read both of those books. They sound very interesting.
Thank you.
And so folks, this is Live, Love, Survive, Thrive, and it's been such an honor to talk to and interview Nancy J. Martin, um, and hear a little bit about her story. And these podcasts are here to help you hear stories of grief, how to overcome it, and actually what they've gone through to thrive again in life. If you want to keep hearing stories about these, you know, um, I have this little link on my website called buymeacoffee.com/ live, love, survive, thrive. And I always say, hey, buy my dog a bone. And that just kind of helps us keep our podcast going and strong. If you like to hear more about those stories, please donate to the cause of Give My Dog a Bone if you want to. Buymeacoffee.com/ live, love, survive, thrive is that website. And it's been such a great honor to have you here, Nancy. And tell the listeners, do you have a favorite food or recipe that you like to share with us today? What's your favorite go-to?
Well, I'm a chocoholic. There's no doubt about that. I have to be careful with that. And in general, I'm a serious foodie and I just love to cook. So, but I haven't eaten any red meat since I was a teenager. So I could easily be a pescatarian.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. This was the episode of Live, Love, Survive, Thrive with Nancy J. Martin. And I'm going to sign off now and say bye to you all. This is Kimberly Hubenette saying bye,
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Kimberly.
and Nancy Martin saying bye for now.
Bye.